Good morning. I'm excited this morning. I get to have a cup of coffee with y'all. The sun's coming through my window. Oh, wait a minute. I'm not supposed to say y'all. I'm supposed to say you guys. So good morning. Let's have a cup of coffee together, you guys. Man, this morning I'm thinking about the application process. And all of us have had to get a job at some time, had to fill out an application. And as we filled out the application, the beginning of part of it starts and says, what are all your strengths? And, you begin to list all your strengths and all the things that you're good at. And then it gets to that next section where it says, what are your weaknesses? And you're like, oh my goodness, here I go. I don't even know these people, but I'm going to write down some of my weaknesses. I used to try to be funny, and I used to write down stuff like kryptonite, and then try to go on and write something afterwards, I can't spell really well or whatever your weaknesses, and that was one of mine, and would write that down, and then they would go to the next question. The next question would be, why should we hire you? What value would you bring to this company or this organization? And then you would have to kind of sell yourself. And I think a lot of times we have that view of God too. We have that view that it's this application process, and we continually fill out this application and continually trying to be good enough. And I think some of that idea was way back in AD 60. And Paul is writing to the church, to the church in Colossae from prison. And he's combating some of these ideas. The people at Colossae at that time, they thought if God was real, why would God create a world where that was so bad and there was so much evil? And so if God was good, how did God create evil? Because there's no way that God would create evil. And they couldn't grab the idea of good and evil, and then somewhere in there that there's God that can control it all and hold it all together and keep it in balance. And the other thing that the people at Colossae at that time had a real big struggle with is this teaching about Jesus. And they're like, okay, he must have been just a mediator. There was all kinds of mediators at that time, people that could point you to God or people that could communicate with God on your behalf. But they're turning around and saying this Jesus was God. And so they're like, okay, I have a struggle with that. The other thing that the people at Colossae believed, and it was a lot like what people believe today, people think that if they're just smart enough, if they're just good enough, if they have enough on their application, then guess what? If there is a heaven or if there is a God, then they should be let in. And everybody can find their own way to God, And, Paul in Colossians chapter 1, verse 15 says that Jesus was the image of the invisible God. He was the icon of God. Other places in Scripture, it says that no one had seen God the Father at any time, but Jesus has revealed him. And I love the whole idea that not only did Jesus represent God, but he revealed him. I think of the icon on the computer screen. You hit the little icon, the whole file opens up. And it's kind of like when you grab Jesus, the whole relationship to God in this world and everything else clears up and opens up, and there's peace behind that. And Paul begins to talk about how Jesus, he was the firstborn of everything. And the firstborn has two things. It has both priority and authority. And the reason I think he was bringing this up is he was trying to say, hey, man, Jesus isn't just someone who can be a mediator and tell you a little bit about God. Jesus was actually God, and he was his son, and he was the firstborn. And so the same rights that a firstborn son would have, he has. And the same authority that a firstborn would have, he has. And what is he going to use that authority for? Well, he's going to use that authority and that position to give us full access to God. Now, it's one thing if you're filling out an application and you're listing your strengths and you're listing your weaknesses, and you give this to the employer and you said, hey, based on my strengths, based on my weaknesses, please give me this job. It's a whole different deal. if the owner of the company sends his son and his son reaches out to you while you're there filling out the application and says, forget the application, I know you, I'm going to vouch for you, I'm going to ask you to come and be part of my company. You're like, man, no longer was I just giving you my strengths and my weaknesses and you were making a decision. I was just given a reference from the owner's son. Well, here's the deal. The God of this world, the God of this universe has come down, and not only has he given you and me a reference, but he has said, anything that you ever done wrong, I am going to pay for. I will die in your place so you have permanent access to God, and you can have permanent peace and permanent relationship and permanent placement in heaven. That's who I am. Just thinking about that makes me have to have another sip of coffee. I hope you go about your day today realizing that the perfect God of this universe, he's the one that's given you and me a reference. The other thing about this verse that just grabs me is, or this passage is, it says that he is before all things, and in him all things are held together. I don't know what you're going through in life today. I don't know what your struggles are. But I just want to tell you, listen, all things are held together by him. It's not just about us getting to heaven. It's about right now while we live on this earth. Jesus has come that we might have a life and life to the fullest. He's the one that holds everything together. God bless you and have a great day.